A beautiful day dawned at the Central Seoul Court, the biggest court in the country. Kang Da-wit, the judge admired by everyone, was always swarmed by reporters, as if he were a famous celebrity. He held the highest authority in handling major criminal and corruption cases, especially those against the most powerful figures in the nation. But even in such a position, he was known as someone affectionate, respectful, and kind in his dealings with guards or secretaries. He always asked questions with genuine concern. The case he was handling now involved an elderly chairman who persistently tried to delay his sentencing to have time to repair the damage. But the truth was that his assistants had been abused, attacked, and even when offered money, they refused. Hundreds of employees had been exploited, tormented, forced to resign, lost their livelihood, and left their family struggling. And above all, the gravest offense was tax evasion, while ordinary citizens continued paying taxes from their small wages. Kang Da-wit directly rejected the defendant's appeal. He sentenced the old man to 10 years of imprisonment and ordered him to pay 70 billion yuan. The elderly chairman fell silent as the audience slowly began applauding in support of the defender of justice. His reputation spread widely, and he was recognized as one of the best judges in the country. Even high-ranking officials who barely finished high school trusted him. Because of his quick and proper handling of major cases, he was soon introduced to the senior judges, the best in Korea's legal system. Though he tried to win the favor of those above him, he often felt scorned, as if they were sharks who never forgave small fish. They even warned him, "Don't be too arrogant, Judge Kang." He cursed inwardly, thinking that if not for their positions in the Supreme Court, how could country folk like him allow elderly people who barely knew anything to lead? One time, in an attempt to appear both brave and good, he helped a woman struggling to print due to a mountain of documents. He thought she was just an employee with a right to vote on the selection of Supreme Court members. But when he saw the badge on his clothes, he realized she was a public interest lawyer. He quickly looked away, did not help retrieve the paper, and even placed the documents on top of the cabinet, as if he didn't care who she was. He grew even more irritated, thinking he had wasted time on a public lawyer with little income, yet arrogant toward a judge. That woman was Park Ki-beum, who was part of the pro-Bono legal team. In the midst of Kang Da-wit's irritation, he received a message that he had been recommended by the union as a Supreme Court judge. He passed through the reporters and immediately visited his mother to tell her the good news. When she was still alive, she had worked tirelessly under a roof made of paper, worrying about her son's studies. She worked until her final breath. A few days later, an old friend from elementary school, Kim Ju-seop, suddenly reached out and suggested they meet. Kang Da-wit did not hesitate, and they drank together. They had not seen each other in decades, and though many things had changed, Kim Ju-seop now claimed to own a huge mansion. Kang Da-wit congratulated him and even generously gave him an autograph he could boast about in the countryside. That was fitting. After all, he was known as the judge of the people. They both got drunk, and he no longer remembered how he got home. The next day, he went to work as usual. But when he opened the compartment of his car, he found a box of apples. When he examined it closely, he saw that the apples had prints of a face, strange yet familiar. He immediately understood the problem. He closed the compartment, refused interviews from reporters, and went to a quiet place to check the contents again. It was worth more than $1 billion. He returned to his office confused and asked his old friend if he had left something in his car, but the man made no mention of the box of apples. He couldn't remember anything at all. If so, who had put it there? He went to the parking lot, a place without CCTV. He understood that this was a trap set for him. He was close to becoming a Supreme Court justice, and his nomination itself had put him in a dangerous position. He needed to find the person behind it to protect himself. He immediately looked for a colleague to confess and ask for help regarding the large amount of money inside his car trunk. He thought, how could he possibly receive a bribe when he was an expert at handling corruption cases? If there was no witness and no clear sender, he could simply donate it to charity. The evidence would disappear, and he would even gain a good reputation. But life wasn't that simple. The next day, the judge called him again. As soon as he arrived, the judge slapped him, shocking him deeply. He was called a traitor, told that he had been supported all this time, and yet it was suspicious why he claimed no one had sent money when he himself had placed a box of money in the trunk. They showed him the video, and there in it was his friend Kim Ju-seop. He couldn't believe it. A file was thrown at him. The person in the video was Ju-seop, a criminal convicted of large-scale fraud and currently wanted for escaping. He immediately called the person claiming to be Kim Ju-seop, but he could no longer be reached. When he called another friend, he learned that Kim Ju-seop had actually passed away 10 years ago. Kang Da-wit never expected that the life he had built at the top would crumble in an instant. He looked for an expert to examine whether the video was spliced, but it turned out to be real, not edited. And the person in the video truly had his own face. After that, he received an order to resign quietly so that he could still preserve whatever was left of his reputation before the scandal completely exploded, at which point nothing would be left to save. As an ambitious man, he had never fallen into such a situation. At that moment, his former girlfriend, Oh Young-in, called. Young-in set an appointment because she knew what had happened and wanted to invite him to her company to help him, and also for her own benefit. The next day, he made his decision immediately, surprising and disappointing everyone. He went to the company and to his colleagues. It was a top law firm owned by Dr. Oh, a powerful figure who operated in the shadows of the law because he once failed to secure a position meant for his son-in-law. Now that Kang Da-wit was here, he believed this was his chance to return to the position he deserved. When he saw Young-in, she still believed that his talent could help elevate her father's company and make it known worldwide. But Young-in reassigned him to the position he needed to honor, the Public Utility Attorney's Office. Kang Da-wit could not understand why the largest law firm in the country had a free attorney's office that did not earn anything. But Young-in said it was for the good of the community and left him there with the young lawyers and their dogs. Kang Da-wit was shocked at the cramped, musty room with no sunlight. There he saw the same lawyer he had insulted before. It felt as if he had fallen from heaven down to the 18th floor of hell and encountered the devil. While he was trying to process his new fate, his colleagues noticed him. A golden retriever began bullying him, and he screamed uncontrollably, even calling it a stray dog. Because of that, his animal-loving colleagues glared at him for his attitude toward the dog. Kang Da-wit went straight to Young-in to ask why his talent was being wasted in the public attorney's office with those people. But Young-in simply smiled and said that only people with the right to choose could make demands. Kang Da-wit swallowed hard. Rage surged from the depths of his heart. After that, he went to the other room to borrow Hwang Jung-woo's clothes for Park Ki-beum, who wholeheartedly took Kang Da-wit's suit to wash and dry it immediately. At that moment, Kang Da-wit calmed down and wondered why the highest-paid law firm in the country had its own team for public service. To understand it further, he began his first case involving a dispute over a dog. The dog's former owner had abused it and eventually abandoned it. A woman from the couple's cafe found the dog. Since it had no collar and the owner could not be verified, she reported it to the authorities. She followed the proper process, nursed the dog to health, and eventually adopted it. But the former owner returned to claim the dog and began causing trouble. That person was known and influential. Kang Da-wit was not fond of dogs, so he had no personal interest in the case. On top of that, such a trivial matter seemed beneath his level. But he couldn't understand why the golden retriever was so attached to him. Everyone noticed and suspected the dog might sense that he was a good person, hence why it clung to him. He set that aside. He was more interested in knowing who made up this group of lawyers. After investigating, he noticed the easiest person to approach was Jun-woo, whose slogan was "Effort is the key to success." After gathering information, Kang Da-wit obtained key details about the members and the founding date of the public law firm, which he found strange. Truly, everything had a reason. Once he retrieved his proper suit, he went to Young-in's office and confidently spoke to her. He said he now understood why she placed him in that small group of public lawyers. Every attorney must perform public service in their career, but here it was counted within the law firm, like having someone plow the field while you just sit. Not only that, the top law firms did not always defend the wealthy. If you had strong support, your position within the company became more stable. So Young-in needed him to lead the team. He agreed to help for 1 year to raise the team's win rate from 20% to 50%. This was the dream ratio for public interest lawyers. And if they succeeded, the company and its branches would become known for defending the weak and fulfilling social responsibility. The young lawyers under Young-in would champion that mission. Young-in asked what he wanted in return. Kang Da-wit did not hide his ambition. Next year, a position for Supreme Court judge would be vacant. He needed the Bar Council's recommendation and Young-in's help. She mentioned a number, 70% win rate, because the position he wanted required that level. The next day at the police station, the defendant in Ji-beum's case, the dog case, was summoned. Before that, the plaintiff, the dog's former owner, arrived in flashy clothes and suddenly punched the woman in the face. The woman grabbed the dog, and the plaintiff scolded her for stealing. Kang Da-wit stood up and warned her about defamation, but she only became more aggressive. It turned out she had powerful backing. She was the daughter of an influential man, a congressman, and a former head of the investigative bureau. She also had a lawyer, Mi-young-hoon, a former prosecutor from the Central Bureau of Investigation and Kang Da-wit's former classmate. He immediately attacked the former judge, saying that stealing a dog was like kidnapping a child. Kang Da-wit remained silent. On the way home with Ji-beum, she said it would be hard to fight Mi-young-hoon because he was an expert at creating evidence that favored him. But no matter how fast he rose, Kang Da-wit had beaten him before. He smiled because the case was exceedingly small, but it was the first time he'd face an opponent equal to him, and that made him excited. When the trial began, he saw Ji-yeon looking anxious and scared, with little experience. Knowing she loved political films, he told her to act as if she were in a movie. So when the judge entered and asked both parties to settle, Ji-yeon boldly stepped forward and accused the plaintiff, only to be kicked out of the courtroom like a joke. The opposing side requested a postponement to gather more evidence, but that was when Kang Da-wit released his strategy. He invited the former judge of a court to be his attorney, a move that shocked the current judge. To make this allowable, he also had to use his own tactics. It was true the former judge had advantages due to long experience, but his real goal was to remove the current judge from the case. He knew the replacement was a hot-tempered judge who often cursed, but was fair and hated deceit. Unfortunately, that judge had held a grudge against Kang Da-wit due to earlier bullying that David committed to advance his career, which caused many hidden cases against him. Suddenly, news arrived that the plaintiff had added evidence, a supposed witness who saw the woman removing the dog's collar and throwing it away, a clear act of theft. The team went to a nearby coffee shop to talk to their client. Ji-yeon informed the woman that a witness had seen her removing the golden retriever's collar and throwing it away. But during that conversation, Kang Da-wit discovered the truth. The woman was lying. With only a few questions, it became clear she had broken the law. She confessed she had indeed thrown away the collar, but claimed she had a reason. It was a shock collar. Whenever the dog barked, it sent an electric shock and hurt the animal. She said she only wanted the owner to understand how severe the shock collar was. So Kang Da-wit tried the model in the shop. He believed it was harmless, but when he put it on himself and tested it, he felt a tight grip around his neck that nearly stopped his breathing. He threw it away immediately because the real one was far stronger than the sample. It was even illegal to import. Under the light, the woman had also seen the wound. The dog's neck bore the mark. But she had not reported animal abuse because the dog still needed to be returned to the owner. So she taught the dog to throw the collar away. The couple who owned the dog loved it dearly because their grandchild had recently died. Their lives had become empty and filled with grief. But on the child's death anniversary, the dog arrived, and they believed their grandchild had returned in another form. They gradually healed. Because of this, the pro bono team understood the situation more deeply. Kang Da-wit and Jun-woo were both shaken. Where was justice if the law was followed without considering context? But Kang Da-wit remained optimistic. He was Kang Da-wit, wasn't he? If he had made a case disappear before, he could do it again here. At the next hearing, Kang Da-wit requested a jury trial for greater fairness. While assigning tasks, Nan-hee disguised herself as a flute teacher and visited the plaintiff's home to teach her child, hoping to gather more information. Jun-woo, strong and persistent, went to the stream to search for the discarded collar. Meanwhile, Kang Da-wit and Young-sil continued gathering documents and evidence for the next hearing. They urged the house helper to stand up and report the dog abuse that had been happening since the dog was taken in. Kang Da-wit stood to defend the rights of animals, hoping to gain sympathy and understanding from the jury regarding the defendant's actions. But the plaintiff's lawyer, Mi Young-hoon, didn't budge. He submitted evidence showing that the helper had been stealing from the employer, which was why she was fired. Thus, he argued, the words of a thief were not credible. And if there truly was an electric shock collar, where was it now? The plaintiff's lawyer asked whether animals weren't simply objects, and whether Congress had passed a law declaring them no longer lifeless property. Young-sil replied that it was not yet a law, but it was a new social standard. Because of that, the jury and audience became intrigued. The judge gave them time before final arguments. The entire pro bono team was worried while waiting to see if Jun-woo would find the collar. But no hope emerged. Everyone began losing confidence. However, during the final argument, Kang Da-wit acted personally, and his tactics shocked everyone. He said animals had no value under the law, and the prosecution's arguments were legally sound. But he only requested that the plaintiff be examined alongside something the court would allow. When the judge agreed, the guard brought in the golden retriever. It immediately avoided the former owner, but approached the elderly woman and the woman who adopted it. Kang Da-wit asked the former owner to examine the dog and the shock collar to prove the dog was truly hers. When she appeared unconvinced, Kang Da-wit suggested it might simply be a mistake. Perhaps she had gotten the wrong dog. He placed a bottle of water on the table with a small note attached and requested a break due to extreme tension. Upon returning, he reminded her she was the daughter of a congressman, a former head of the prosecution, a person of high position and education. How could I be cruel to an animal? She asked. But the truth, he said, would appear on the front page. And would her father's career remain safe if the case blew up? After that, he handed the electric collar to the dog's pocket for the plaintiff to examine again. The woman panicked. She confessed they had taken the wrong dog and immediately withdrew the complaint. The golden retriever barked contentedly and was led away, as if it had finally gained the freedom it had long awaited. It was later revealed that Kang Da-wit had sent a message to the plaintiff instructing her to call her father, like a slap to her face. If a small case like this had such consequences, what more with something bigger? And that wasn't all. Kang Da-wit also knew that Judge Choi loved animals. He knew that when it came to animals, it was as if he had won 100 battles. In the end, the judge declared the defendant not guilty, a victory for Kang Da-wit in his first battle. Ju-yeon was also present in court. After hearing the verdict, she smiled with secret satisfaction and left. But who would have thought that the person sitting beside her in the car would be the very person who would drag Kang Da-wit from heaven into hell because of a box of apples worth $1 billion? Could this have been a plan long prepared for him? And this is where episode 2 of the newest Korean drama